Have you been to a white elephant party before? Do people still do that? You know, the white elephant? Yes, some of you, maybe not. Okay. I remember thinking those were pretty fun. My parents would talk about going to white elephant parties in the 1980s and maybe the early 90s, and I always thought that sounded like a fun idea. And if you're unfamiliar with the concept, you go to a party and you bring something from home that you don't want anymore, and you wrap it up, and then there's some sort of a gift exchange that takes place, and everybody goes home with everybody else's junk. And you're giving away a white elephant kind of a gift that you don't really want, maybe they don't want, but hey, you never know. You might end up taking home something unexpected and delightful that your friends thought was something to be discarded. Well, I always kind of wanted to go to one of these white elephant parties, and I never had the opportunity. So one time, many years ago, at the beginning of my ministry, I was leading the youth group one night. And I had announced a few weeks in advance that we were going to be having a white elephant gift exchange as part of the youth group that night. And oftentimes, and my thought around this is that the person who ends up hosting these events usually has a gift that they have in mind that they want to get rid of, right? And that's what starts the whole thing going. And that was what happened with me. A few months before that, I had received as a gift for doing or officiating a wedding for this couple, they had given me this wrapped up gift, and when they handed it to me, they said, "Be careful, it's delicate." Okay, I was curious about this. I opened it up, and it was a piece of cut glass that was in the shape of a diamond, and super glued to the front of this diamond glass was a clock, and underneath it was a piece of sea coral that had been spray painted bright pink, and then there was a neon blue plastic dolphin that was swimming in front of the coral. So this is something, a little knick-knack that you would put on a shelf. It doesn't really go with my general aesthetic at home, and it's the kind of thing that you would pick up at a gift shop when you were visiting the beach. All right, so I had this precious item. This was my contribution to the white elephant gift exchange. And so the event happens, and one of the youth, I think he was probably about a 7th grader at the time, he ends up taking home this thing. And we had arranged where the other adult and I would drive this boy and his brother back to their family's house afterwards for whatever reason they needed a lift home. So we drove them home. We walk in the house, and the mom says, "Welcome home, boys. I'm so excited to see what you got at the white elephant gift exchange." And I said, "Okay, I have to apologize. Your son is coming home with this piece of junk that I was given as a gift, and it's this thing with this dolphin and this piece of really unnaturally painted coral and a clock that doesn't really work. And anyway, this is now yours." And the boy is so excited that he's not listening to any of this. He rifles through his bag, through all the tissue paper, pulls out the item, and he goes, "Look, Mom, I got it to add to your collection." He then puts it on the shelf behind me, and this bookcase is full of the same kind of thing that I had just called tacky junk. I left their house quickly. They still stayed members at the church. I was grateful for that, but I wasn't invited back in their home. This whole idea of giving is what I want to focus on this morning, and talking about the kind of gifts that we offer and the gifts that we bring. We have been in this stewardship series now for a few weeks. We're wrapping it up this week and next week, and we have been talking about stewardship of different kinds of things than we typically talk about. So remember, the first 2 weeks we talked about being good stewards of time. And Andrew provided a wonderful approach to that. I provided another thought about that. Last week we talked about our stewardship of technology and kind of how we use the internet and conduct ourselves online. Today I want to be talking more about the financial gifts that we offer and what those gifts represent in our lives and what they represent in the church. And I thought it would be interesting to go back and do a little look back into the Bible about where this idea of giving, of gifts, and making offerings comes from. For those of you who have been in the disciple program this fall, you have recently read about this as we tackled Leviticus a couple of weeks ago. Had a great turnout for Leviticus night, which was always a good thing. But we had been talking about gifts in terms of what the Old Testament sets up. And really, early on, some of the first gifts that anybody ever offers to God are gifts of sacrifices. And this is sort of the most historic and the earliest kind of gift that we end up seeing in the Bible. And the idea, and part of what I read gets at this, but the idea is that an animal would be brought as a gift to God. The animal would be slaughtered, and then it would be placed on a fire. And the idea being that as the fire consumes the animal, that it brings up pleasant aromas into the heavens. Now, depending on how that animal cooks, I guess you might think it smells good, or it might smell pretty pungent to you, but for whatever reason, that was a way of sharing a gift with God. And of course, if we have this idea that God is in the heavens and the cosmos above, then something that rises from the earth heavenward would be an appropriate gift. And so we find this, even in the book of Genesis, we find some offerings this way. Later on, we're going to end up seeing more giving in terms of gifts of the harvest. And some of the first gifts, the finest gift, the first fruits, will be offered to God. And then there'll be all kinds of different food offerings. Monetary offerings will come a little bit later on. And the passages that I selected today from Leviticus focus on a different kind of offering, and that is a sacrifice. And so I think it's fair to kind of merge the idea of offerings and sacrifices. And for the most part, they're talked about almost synonymously in Scripture. And so what's interesting about these sacrifices that are being talked about in Leviticus is that it talks about the different kinds of things that people can offer. And what I find so unique about this is that the offerings are given, or the sacrifices are made, on something of, I guess we could call it a sliding scale. So, the first thing that gets talked about, the thing that I read to you from the first chapter of Leviticus, it says that if you want to offer a bull, that would be a very pleasing gift to God. That would be a kind of offering that would cover a whole bunch of things. It would be a gift of thanksgiving and gratitude. It would be a gift that would help make things right. If you have sinned or you have caused harm to God or your neighbor, this is a way of getting back in right relationship with God. And so a bull is an appropriate gift. If you are the kind of person that has many head of cattle, and you have multiple bulls to be able to offer. So a bull is the kind of gift that somebody who has quite a few resources would be able to give. And basically what God is saying is that if you have the ability to do this, this is what I would like to see from you. Then we move down to the next category. Let's say you have many head of sheep, but you're not quite in the bull and cattle kind of end of the financial spectrum, then perhaps the right gift for you to offer is a sheep. And like the bull, it should be a male sheep without blemish. Oh, and if you can't do that, well, then for the next tier down, and for those who have fewer resources, it could be a bird offering. And you heard me read, it could be a turtle dove or a pigeon. That would be an appropriate gift. And so if that's what you can afford, then that's the gift that God would like to see you offer. And then there's even grain offerings and other things that are for people who have even more meager resources, right? So you see this sliding scale, which feels appropriate. Nobody's relationship with God in the Old Testament was ever hindered because of how much or how little that they had. They were supposed to give a gift that was appropriate to what they were able to offer. But here's the other thing, and we talked about this in the Bible study a couple of weeks ago. Here's the other thing that I think sometimes gets overlooked. First of all, it says that it should be a male and it should be without blemish. What's the male part about? Well, I think that we've already seen at this point in the scriptures this precedent where the firstborn son is the one that will receive a birthright and will carry on the family legacy and that kind of thing. But that's not really what this is about. Not when it comes to animals. You see, if you are in the world of raising livestock and animal husbandry, a female is more valuable than a male. One male can be a stud numerous times over, right? But the females are the ones that bring new life into the world. The females are the ones that will birth more and increase the size of your flock. So really what you want to do is have a few males in your flock, but you want to have a whole bunch of females. And so when it says that God's requirement is to provide a male, what God is saying is, I want to receive what you are capable of offering, but I am not asking so much of you as to put you in financial risk. You get that? I think that we often overlook that when we're reading that with, oh gosh, here it is, the firstborn male thing again. It's not that. It's God saying, I want you to give in a way that you will feel it, but I don't want you to give in such a way that it jeopardizes your well-being. And then it's this part without blemish. And I don't think it's because God likes the way that certain animals look or whatever better than others. But I think it goes to what is behind the gift. If you give of an animal that, for example, is not able to, like let's say it's a cow that is unable to produce milk, well, that doesn't feel like as much of a sacrifice as a gift, does it? It feels like offering what's left. It's as Stephen said earlier in the announcements, it's the thing in the pantry that you donate that expired already, right? It is the white elephant gift of sacrificial giving, which is to say, it's not a sacrifice at all. And so the blemish-free thing isn't God being snobbish. It's God saying it doesn't really count when I see that this hasn't made an impact on your life. This is not a gift, this is not a genuine gift from you if there is not something sacrificial behind it. And so it's this balance. I want you to give on a sliding scale. I want you to give to the point that you recognize that this is a true gift, that this represents something from you. This isn't pocket change. But also I don't want to put you at risk or in jeopardy. And don't give me your leftovers. I'm not looking for your white elephant kind of response to this. And this is a precedent that I think that even though now we have moved into the New Testament, and as Christians we have embraced the idea that Jesus' gift for us represents the ultimate sacrifice, not because God was so angry and vengeful and out for blood that God demanded Jesus' blood, but that God said we are going to put an end once and for all to this space and this distance, this chasm that separates humanity from me. Let's unite the two. Let's bring them together so they can be at one for all time, forevermore. We don't need to continue this animal sacrifice business. Let's do one once for all. And we can be in right relationship, and this can be restored again. But part of this relationship also means that I'm going to ask the things of you that we talk about when we talk about church membership. God asks for our prayers, and God asks for our presence, and God asks for our service, and God asks for our witness, and God also asks for our gifts, because it is one of the ways that we respond in the Old and the New Testament tradition of giving joyfully, giving generously, giving with great appreciation for what God has done in our lives and our many, many blessings. And it's a way of saying, I want to give something that is of such a kind that I know what I'm doing, that this represents something sacrificial on my part. Not in a blood and fire kind of sacrifice way, but something that says to give this is a sacrifice. It shouldn't be to the point of resentment. It shouldn't be to the point of risking financial hardship, but it should be to the point of feeling it so it's not leftovers. It's not white elephant. Next Sunday, as we celebrate quite a few things, honestly, it will be a very joyful day here at the church, and I'm excited about that. We're going to celebrate and remember the saints of the church and those who have gone on before us. We're going to be celebrating Holy Communion that will move right into the feast of our potluck and our lunch of fellowship time together. And we will have an opportunity to share our gifts and the sacrifices that we make representing our financial gifts to the church for 2026. And we share these things because it is a worshipful thing. And we share these gifts because we know what they do. I mean, on the one hand, yes, they do the not terribly romantic things of keeping the power on and the air conditioning going and all that, but it also funds the ministries at the church. And it helps cover salaries for the staff, and it keeps things going that you appreciate, and the programs and the outreach and all of the things that we get to do because of your generosity. But perhaps the most important thing of the reason that we give is because this is an opportunity for us to show our appreciation. To make a sacrificial gift because we say that this matters, that this precedent was set long, long ago. And we continue in the tradition of those who give and give generously and give sacrificially because of what this church, its ministries represent to you in your life and your commitment to God and God's ongoing work in the world. It's not meant to be a hardship, and it's certainly not meant to be punitive, but it's meant to be an opportunity to give and support something joyfully. After all, the things that we love and that we care deeply about, we have deep pockets for. The things that we are passionate about, the things that we say are important bedrock things in my life, we find ways to support. And this will be our opportunity to do that for our church, the ministries here, and the connection that we have as a church family. So you should have received, and if not yet, tomorrow in the mail, you'll receive a letter from me, and it will have an envelope or a little card for sharing your gifts and your estimate of giving for the coming year. And I hope that you will take the time to think about some of these things we've talked about this morning. To enter into thoughtful conversation with your partner, to be in prayer about this at home, to go back to the scriptures and look at what giving and sacrifice looks like, but also to be asking that question about what is God calling me to do as far as a response for this moment so that I can share these gifts for the coming year. Because these are the things that are the sacrificial giving on our part that shows our appreciation for God in one respect and funds the church and its ministries in the other. And as you do this, I hope you'll take it seriously so that you can bring that gift forward next Sunday with joy and with gratitude and showing great honor to God as we share these gifts and then we participate in a feast of joy and fellowship to follow. Let us pray.